Recording has started. Please take the stage.
All right, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the last classes, we studied how to create a basic website, including basic components like headings, paragraphs, text formatting tags, links, images. And we also studied some different types of components of HTML components or HTML tags, like empty tags and empty tags and those tags that contain two tags, starting tag and ending tag. And also we divided all the components based on their display property, which was block scope elements and um, inline elements. And let me share my screen, and I will quickly open the presentation for today's class. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. So today we are going to discuss form input in select text. If you go to any social media application, or it is an e-commerce application, whatever application is, in most cases when your interaction a little bit increases, it asks you for your credentials for your account. So you have two options, whether to create a new account, or if you have already an account, so login is that account. So what is needed in the login? You have seen that there is some input fields, like for example, let me cross that. For example, if I search Facebook login page, right? So in the images, I will show you. So when you log into Facebook, some kind of like this form appears in front of you, whether it's Instagram, any social media application, whatever it is. So there is a field in which you type your email, and there is a field in which you type your password, and it's not showing to you because you may be sitting in a public place and someone is watching you, and you don't want to show your password to them. So your password is basically protected, not showing. And there is then a login button when your credentials are when you give your enter your credentials, you press on login button, and based on your credentials, the app either it logs you in, or there is some error and it throws you some error. So this thing in which we are entering our information and sending it back to the server, this is called a form. And these things in which we write our input, write our credentials, these are called input fields. So in today's class, we will be discussing form and different kinds of input fields, and also we will be studying the select tag, which is also used in forms. So HTML form tag. So let me open Visual Studio Code. I am sure you all have the Visual Studio Code. And let me open, first change the theme is suggested by Jabran. And also I will open the folder for today's class, which is in my lectures, Palestine third classroom. All right, so over here, let me create a basic HTML file, which is index.html. Let me also zoom the font a little bit. I guess this is fine because otherwise I wouldn't be able to write the code.
It's sorry, zoom it a little more because my screen is not showing it big enough.
Okay, no problem. So we have already studied that if we want to create a basic website, we have to type HT, and it will give the Visual Studio Code will give a suggestion for writing the boilerplate code for us. So I will simply click on it and it will write the boilerplate code for itself. Since we haven't studied the meta tags so far, so I will delete them out. No problem if you don't have any meta tags, it's not a big deal. And you can start class, right? And over here, it's my convention that I follow. In every website, I start with H1. I give the class number, and then after it, I give the title of the class, or you can say the topic of the class. So today we are studying form, input, and select takes. Then I write usually the paragraph, and just for demo purposes, Alt Z to make the view a little bit easier for us. Okay, now if we want to create a form, we have to write a form tag, and move that, save it, and you will be expecting something, but if I double click on this website, nothing will happen, nothing is showing up, right? If I write, let's say a link, if I define a link over here, or let me define a link over here to Google, right? When I refresh it, see, there is nothing in between this paragraph and this empty tag. So basically, form tag by default, it does not render any element. Instead, it is a wrapper tag. By wrapper tag, I mean you have seen things that are wrapped in plastic, right? For example, you bought a chocolate. So the chocolate is the shopkeeper. He doesn't give you you can say just the chocolate. He basically gives you a packet. So the packet is basically wrapper, or it is a packet for that chocolate. So for wrapper, it's also a wrapper tag. You have to write some tags inside a visual component. So you have to define some input tags inside the form tag. So you can say I have written tags for hosting input fields in HTML. So it's basically hosting or wrapping the input fields. An HTML form is used.
Omar, you're breaking. Can you hear me? Khalid, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so it's Omar's internet, right?
Saying where the server sees the
Omar,
processes
Omar,
the
Omar.
input.
You
Sorry.
you broke in between like a minute ago.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. Can you
Where
repeat?
was I? Do you remember?
You are in the forms.
Okay.
Just right in
Okay.
the
Okay.
slide.
Okay, so I was saying that form is not a standalone UI component. It's used as a wrapper for other for tags like input tags, or for input components. If I say component or tag or HTML element, it's basically the same thing. So it's a wrapper text. Standalone form component will not render, or it will not draw, or it will not show anything, any UI thing in the website. As you can see, there is no gap or nothing in between this paragraph and this line. So an HTML form is used to collect user input. You have most oftenly we need to collect the input from the user, and then we send it to the server for processing. The server processes it and validates that data, and then save it, or generates a response according to that data. So basically, for collecting the user input in our website, we use HTML forms. It is a container. I'm talking about the HTML form. So it means HTML form is a container for different types of HTML input elements, such as text fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, submit buttons, etc. So in our example, what we saw earlier, this thing in which we write some text in the website, this is called an input field. So what is a radio button? I will quickly. Most oftenly, you have seen multiple choice options in which you can select one option, like the payment. If you want to do the payment, so they give you option whether you want to use Visa, Mastercard, or PayPal. So you can select one option in between. So these are called radio buttons, and check boxes are maybe you have seen some options that you can select multiple options. That is basically a tick. I will just. If you see over here, we can select multiple options. So this is called a checkbox. A checkbox. You can, if you see, you can select one or two items or whatever. These are checkboxes. We have seen the inputs. We have seen the checkboxes. We have seen the radio buttons and the button that is used for submitting a form. Basically, by submit, we mean to send the data from the website to a server. So when you click on login in the Facebook, it basically takes the data, input fields, and send it to the server. The HTML input element is the most used form element. You have seen this input element a lot than with respect to the radio buttons, checkboxes, and other thing. So let's study input fields. So let's say I want to collect the username from a user. So I will, let's say, I want to create a sign up form now. So for sign up form, I will create an h3 and I will say sign up, right? And inside the form element, I will write an input tag. I have told you in the last class many times that any tag that is used for text formatting, it will normally contain two tags, a starting tag and an ending tag. In those tags that are not for text formatting, those tags will contain only a single tag, right? It will not be starting or ending tags. It will be basically just a single tag. You can see form element also a wrapper takes wrapping something. So for wrapping something, you need to understand from where it starts and to where it is, like where is the end. So that is why form element also has two tags, starting tag and an ending tag. Since input field is not for text formatting, that is why input field is also an empty tag, means that it doesn't contain a starting tag and an ending tag. So I can write input just like this. Whether you write it like this or like this, no matter, both are fine. So let me save it and let me refresh it, and you will see in an input field over here, right? Um, okay, there is no information for the user to, like, what is this input field about. If you see the login form that we earlier saw of the Facebook, let me go back to that thing. Over here you can see that there is a hint text inside the input field when it is empty. When you type something, this text disappears. This text in input field, this basic, it is called technically placeholder, right? So how to define a placeholder inside an input field? For placeholder, there is a specific attribute, and that attribute is placeholder. So I will say enter your name. and I save it and refresh it, see there is a placeholder, enter your name, and I can enter any name over here, Umar Jibran, right? Just like this. Okay, also if I want to add a label over here, I can write a label. There is a label tag. For label means the text that appears in front of or with the input field to identify what it is, right? So label, I will say name. See, since both are inline elements, that is why both are appearing in the same line. Okay, I will create another label for email, and I will create an input field, and placeholder is, let's say, enter your email. So see, since these are inline elements, so they are appearing adjacent to each other in a single line. If I want to move this email to the next line, I can write a BR over here, and this line will be broken by this BR. Okay, there are different types of inputs, by the way. What if I want to create an input field for phone number? So I will say input, and remove these attributes. For the time being, we haven't studied it. Enter your phone number. Okay, I use a BR to move the phone number field to the next line. Sorry. Okay. Now see, this is a phone number field, and when I type some characters in it, like the text, so it's also taking the text. I want to make it like picky. I don't want the user to enter the text in the phone number. I want to forbid him or prevent him from entering the text. Instead, I just want the user to enter the digits of the phone number. So for that, we have another attribute in the input field, which defines the type of an input field. By default, the type of an input field is it is text, right? So if you specify the text or not, by default the type of an input field is text. So if I check it now, it is text. It can take number. It can, since number is also a character, so every character can be entered in this in this input field because its type is a text. If I want to make it phone number, then I will say type tell. So tell means telephone, and when I want to enter some character, it's also taking that. I guess I should convert it to number. So it wouldn't take then oh, I didn't refresh it. Let me try tell and let me refresh it. And okay, it's still taking, refresh it. Okay, let me convert it to number. Refresh it, and you can see arrows is appearing over here. And when I try to write some characters in it, you will probably hear the pressing sound of the button. See, I want to enter the text, but it is not allowing the text. But if I want to enter some number, it is taking that digits because its type is number. So this is the number type. Another type of it is the email type. Type email. You can type any text in the email, but if this is required and you want to submit the file, the form, so then it will say if you didn't enter a valid email, so it will then throw an error that please enter a valid email. We will check it soon. So we have the date. Okay. The next information I want to collect from the user is the age of the user. So label. or let's say date of birth. So for getting the date of birth, we have seen that there is a calendar basically, and you have to choose the date in the calendar. So for that input field, we have it is also an input field, and this input field we have to say type is date. So when you select that date, you can see a date input field is over here, it's rendered. When you click on it, so you can see a calendar is open. You can select any value. If you click on that, you can select any year, you can select any month, whatever it is. See, this is the date input type. Okay. Email, month, pass. Okay. Another thing, I want the user to create a password for his account. So for password, we have to create password. Let's say the label is create password, and the input field for create password is its type is password basically. And in the placeholder, I will say enter your password. So if you see, the only difference in the password field is that you can enter any character, but it is not visible. Instead, it's showing it those characters as dots. So that is the only difference. In the password field, you can enter anything, but it will not be visible on the screen. Okay. The next thing is range, search, submit, tell, text, time. Okay. If you also want to select the time, if you, let's say, schedule alarm or notification every day 8, right? Let's say there is a scenario that we also want a specific time. So for letting the user to enter time in an input field, you have to define an input field and make the type of that input field is time. So if you see, there is a time field, and when you click on it, you can select a particular time in this input field. So this is the type field. This is the time field. Okay. Is there anything? Okay, now if I want to submit this form, what I have to do, how I can submit a form, I can basically inside this form, I can create a button and I will say submit this form. And this button will basically submit this form. By default, if there is one button, it will submit the form. You don't have to define the type of the button. There are also types of button as well. There are 3 types of button, which is I will check it. It's button, it's menu, it's reset, and it is submit. So button mean normal button. If you make make the type of a button submit, so it will basically submit that form when that button is inside a form. So if you specify it or not, if there is just one button in a form, it will basically submit the form. Let us check. Save this, refresh it, and let's say I'm filling this form, Omer @gmail.com, phone number, random phone number, Omer @gmail.com. Some random password, and I have defined this. Okay, when I click the submit button, you can see over here it will refresh the page, and the form will start from scratch again, from its initial state. The state in which it was initially, it will convert to the HTML because the page is refreshed. By default, the behavior when you submit a form is that it submits the data and refreshes the page or refreshes the website. Where this data go, it do not went anywhere because we haven't configured that part yet to send it to where. We haven't configured it yet. We will inshallah study in the JavaScript. For the time being, the HTML, the focus of HTML is just to create the elements, right? Where will the data go? How will we handle the data? It's the job of the JavaScript. If you see, if I want to submit just like this, it's not yelling any errors. What if I don't want to submit the form unless and until the user provides a valid name. So for that, I have to make this a required field. I have to make this input field as a required field by setting an attribute of required. Just write required and it will be required when the form is submitted. So if it is empty, let me refresh it. If it is empty and you try to submit the form, it will not submit the form by default. See, when I click on submit, it is saying that please fill out this form. So when I write something in it and then I submit this form, see, it submits the form and the form is reset again. Now, if I also make this email field required, so now let's see. Mayor, and let's say it's empty and I want to submit it. See, it's yelling that please fill out this form. Let's say I just write Gibran. Now it's also saying that since the type is an email, it is also giving me errors that the email that you want to enter, the value of the email is not a valid email because there is no @ sign in that. So if I enter an @, still it is saying that it is incomplete because it's not the format of a valid email. So I will write gmail.com and the error will be gone and then I can submit this form. So required by setting the required attribute, you can make an input field required. Easy peasy. Okay, color checkbox, search, reset. Okay. There are some other attributes that can be set on the input field as well. For example, by default, you have seen the edit forms, right? Let's say you have the Facebook profile or you have the Instagram profile or any social media profile. You go to your profile, it is basically showing, and you want to edit it. So what they show you in the edit form, basically they show you already the values that are already there in that form. So how we can do that over here in the input field, how we can show a value by default inside an input. See, the placeholder is just a placeholder, it's not a value. How we can set a default value in an input field? So there is an attribute for setting a default value, which is default value attribute, right? Pretty easy, I guess. Default value, I guess, like this or like this. Let me cheat, right? Default value attribute. See, I forgot it. HTML.
And just a heads up, W3 Schools is a great resource for webs development. So you can see it right in action.
Yeah, exactly. It's very helpful. But why the default value is not working over here? I'm missing something or what? Interesting. Okay, let me search default value attribute. Right here.
Isn't it just
We are
value?
seeing
It's
value.
it's just value, Umar.
Okay.
Can you try that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I change it? Yes. So this is so setting the default value of an input field, we have to set the value attribute, and we can pass the default value to it. Now see the power of this. When you set a default value and you, let's say, submit the form, I say the jabran@gmail.com, and I submit the form. So the form will be submitted, and the the form is then resetted. It went back to its initial form, and you can see again the Omer value is appearing over here because it's the default value. So you can set the default value of anything. You can set the default value of a password. You can set the default value of an email or whatever it is. All right. Sometimes you have seen that in some websites we cannot change a particular value. So let's say I want to show the email to the website, but at the same time I don't want the user to edit it because in my app he cannot change his email. So let's say I'm saying I have the gibran@gmail.com value for the email, and I don't want to edit it. So if you don't want the user to edit that field, you have to pass another attribute which is read only. So if you make it read only, you can see that I can just see it and I am unable to change it. See, I'm clicking on it and I'm pressing the buttons, but it's not editing this field, right? There is also another attribute which is disabled, right? So if you refresh it, disables make the styles of that input fields a little bit more like it is not editable. There is also some functional difference as well, but for the time being, keep in mind that disabled and placeholder or read only, both attributes make an input field disabled. It doesn't allow a user to change the value of that input field. That makes sense? Okay. I guess we are done with the feeds. There is also another field if you want to, um, let's say, profile picture, right? You want to give the user the functionality to upload profile picture or profile image. So for that, how to pick a file or an image from an input from a website. So we have to define an input field, and we have to set the type to file. Now see, when I save it and I refresh it, you can, okay, let me write PR so that it's more clear. Refresh it. So see, in the profile picture, there is a button now, which is choose file button. And when you click on it, a window explorer window is opened and you can choose any file in it, right? For the timing, it's just allowing the PDF and the, I guess, let's me go to pictures and see this. I'm selecting my this picture and open. So it's basically selected that picture. When I click on the submit, now the form is refreshed again. Okay, in forms, we can create another button, which is reset, right? And I have told you earlier that if there is one button, that button will act as submit button. But if you have multiple buttons inside a same form, then you have to specify the type, that which type of button it is. By default, it will be then just the button type. So I want this submit button to be of type submit, that it will submit a form. And I want this button to be a reset button. What is a reset button? Let's see. So refresh it. There are two buttons, submit and reset button. So let's say I have entered some phone number. I have messed something up. I have given wrong password. And then I want this form to go back to its initial stage. So instead of refreshing it, I have also the option to reset it from a button, which is the reset button. So if I click on the reset button, it will it will set the form to its initial state. And what was the initial state? The value was Omer, there was an email, and there was nothing in the phone number and create password. So when I click on the reset, it resets the form. And when I write something and I want to submit it, it will basically submit the form and revert the form to its initial state as well. But it will submit the form, and reset will just reset the form. I guess I have made it clear. Okay, when you want to enter an address, so for address we have long input fields. So for that, creating that input field, we have a special tag which is called text area. So I will say address, and for that long, for inputting long text, we have an input field by the name of text area, and it's not an input tag of type text area. Instead, in HTML we have another tag for text area, which is text area, right? And you can specify columns and rows in that text area to basically control the length and the width of that text area. For the time being, let me remove these rows and columns and just save it, and see by default this a little bit larger input field is created in our website. Let me write a BR so that it can move to another line, another BR, and also a BR over here to have some space between these components or these tags. If I want to increase the default size of this, I can, by the way, I increase or decrease the size of this input field. But if I want to increase the size or control the initial size of this text area, you have seen the attributes for them, which is cos, I will say 10, and rows, number of rows in the initial render, and it is, let's say, 20. So let's save it, refresh it, and by default it's like this. I will say 20, 30 rows, and I will say 30 columns and 10 rows. So when I refresh it, so my text area is like this. If I want to set the placeholder, so there is a placeholder attribute over here. Enter your address and see placeholder is over here. There is also, you can set the default value, which is, let's say, Palestine. So see, this value is appeared over here, and you can edit it basically. So if you want to give a default value to a text area, you have to basically write that text inside, in between the text area tags. All right, so that is a text area. We have multiple. What if we have multiple choice options, like for example, the gender, right? So what is the gender? So there can be male and female. So we have two options. Which option we want to select? So for that, how to show that to a user in a website? So for that, let's say saying gender, and to select, it's basically called a drop down. I will show you how it looks. See closely. For creating a select drop down, we have to write the select tag, and inside the select tag, since there are multiple options, so I have to create multiple options. So for creating multiple options, I have to write those options inside the option tag. For example, male and female. Save it, sorry, and refresh it, and you can see there is a select. This is called select tag, or we also call this menu as a drop down. You also call it menu, whatever it is, drop down, menu. These are alternative names of it. And this whole component or this whole tag is called select tag. So you can select male, you can select female. This is very ugly looking. Don't worry, inshallah, in the next classes we will study CSS We will make our website more beautiful. Just bear these ugly styles for the time being. These are the default styles, but inshallah in the future we will be making it beautiful. So if you want to add some more options, you have to add those options over here. We have seen that there is an option select a gender, for example, and that option is not selected by, you cannot select it. So how to define that option? So for that you have to define select an option, right, select your gender, and it will appear is another option in this menu, but I don't want the user to select it. So for disabling it, we can use the disabled attribute over here. So the user wouldn't be able to select this option,
Option.
right? Okay, by default, I don't want to select the male. By default, I want to select your gender. So by selecting a specific option by default, you can do it by giving the value attribute of these options, default option. And what this value attribute is for, basically when you submit the form, so the website actually sends this value to the backend, not the text in between the option, but it sends the value inside the text inside the value attribute, right? I hope you got you got the point. When you submit a form, let's say I have selected the male and I submit the form, so this website do not send this text to the backend. Instead, it sends the text in the value attribute. So I have to define the value attribute with every option. So let's say I want to send this value to the backend as well. So I have to set it to male and also female, right? So nothing on the front end changes, but if I want to select this option by default, so I can say default or value, what is that? I guess there is another attribute which is selected. So if you pass a selected attribute to an option, it is selected by default. So see, by default, the select your gender is selected, and now you can again you cannot select this select your gender. Instead, you can select male and you can select female. So that is how the select take works. Okay, we have also another types of multiple choice, which are radio buttons and checkboxes. So, for example, you don't want to show the gender in the select, right? So I will show it in the radio button. So basically, if you have to, you want the user to select one option in multiple options, so you have to use radio buttons. So you have already seen the radio buttons or radio options. For creating radio options, there is an input field, which the type of which is basically radio, right? So when I just define that input of radio, let's see what is rendered on the website, or what is in the web, what it creates on the website. So when I refresh it, it just created this circle which I can select, and there is no value over here, right? So I can write another label with it, and I will say this is male. So see, male, and then I will create another input, radio, and I will say label female. So see, there are two options, male and female. But if you see, I can select both. I have told you that in radio buttons we can select only one option, but I can select both options. Why? Because the browser doesn't know that this male and female, these are the options of a same question, right? So how we can tell the browser that these are the options of a same question? We can say it by setting an attribute which is, I guess, for or what. So
property name. I guess name.
name, yeah. Yeah, very good. It's the name. That's so impressive. This is the name. So we have to give both every pair, every option or every radio input the same name. So by giving it the same name, the browser knows that, oh, these options belong to the same question. So I will say the name of it is gender, right? Now when I refresh it and I select, so I can select one option. I can select only one option. Why? Because I have given it the same name. If I change the name, it will not. It wouldn't know that these belong to a same question. Also, we can set a value attribute over here, and whatever the value you enter, whatever the text you give in the value attribute, it will be sent to the backend. So the value attribute is basically for the backend. So I'll say male in small letters and female. Another thing to note is there is an attribute in the label which is called for attribute, and already you have seen whenever I create a label tag, so the for attribute is by default over there, and I deleted it over and over. Now it's the time to discuss it. What is the for attribute for? It's basically linking a label with the input field which is represented by this label. So in the for, you will give the name of that input field. So for example, I am saying I want to connect this label. I want to connect this label to this input field. So I will give the value of the name of this input field in the for of this label. So what is the name, the value of the name in of this input field? It is gender. So I have to copy it and I have to give it in the for, which is gender, right? Same over here, for, and I will paste it. Same thing over here. I want to since see, I can give the name input field not just to a radio type input field. I can give this attribute to every input field, right? So I can give the name field to this name attribute to this password field, and I will name it password, let's say. And and to connect this label with this input field, I have to set the for attribute of this, and I have to write the same value in this label which is in the name of that input field. So copy this password and copy the value of this name and paste it over here. So now the browser will know that, oh, this label is representing this input, and why it's beneficial for us to tell the browser this connection. It is because that we know that there are a lot of disabled people who can use the websites as well. So the speech recognition, the speech technology that is telling them that what is rendered on the screen, basically these four attributes help that speech navigator or whatever the technology is to tell that this label is connected to the specific input field. So this is basically the purpose of the for attribute. There are also other attributes as well. The other benefit of this name attribute is that whenever we send the data to the server, it is basically how it is sent. So see, it is sent like this. If I submit this form, so the website will send the data in the following form. It will say whatever we have given the name, whatever we have given the value in the name field of this input field, it will write that we entered to that key. For example, what is the name of the name input field? What is the value of the name attribute of this name input field? We haven't configured it yet, so I will give it name as, let's say, full name. So it will send the data like this. When I submit this form, the website will send the data is full name, and let's say I have entered Umair Gibran, and I submit the form. So basically, this the website will send the data or in this input field like this: full name Umair Gibran, like this. So that is why the name field will not show something, or it will not like it's not linked to some UI or some visible content. Instead, it is related to the backend stuff. So also always remember that give proper names to your every input field. Inshallah, in the JavaScript, we will study that why it is necessary, and you will see it in action as well. So this is all about the form fields. Also, there are some specific attributes into different types of forms. For example, there is a min-max attribute to the input field of type number. For example, in this phone
Umair,
number, let's say G.
sorry to be buskill, but we have just under 1 minute left. Let's take it in the next call. Short call it will be, right?
Okay, yeah, we
Okay.
can.
So everyone, please take a 5 minutes break, and we will start again. See you in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
See.
Thank you.